What if I told you that in today's world, stupidity isn't just tolerated, it's celebrated? That being loud, shallow, and proudly ignorant has somehow become a fast track to fame, influence, and even leadership. Think about it. When was the last time deep thinking trended? When did nuance go viral? We live in a culture where the most meaningless personalities dominate the spotlight, where 15-second clips get more engagement than thoughtful arguments, and where millions flock to content that requires zero effort to understand and even less effort to question. This isn't just a passing trend, it's a seismic shift in how our entire culture operates. We've engineered a world where empty entertainment is rewarded over real substance, where clever memes have replaced meaningful debate, and where speed and spectacle matter more than depth or reflection. Once, public dialogue was a crucible for ideas, a place where dissent, debate, and intellectual wrestling shaped society. Now, it's a battlefield of slogans, knee-jerk reactions, and dopamine-fueled distractions. We scroll past philosophy to watch pranks. We skip expert insight to chase the next viral soundbite. But here's the uncomfortable truth. This isn't accidental. Popular culture doesn't just mirror our values anymore, it manufactures them. The media we binge, the influencers we idolize, the content we reward, it's all teaching us something dangerous. That it's better to be likable than informed, easier to be emotional than rational, and far more profitable to be shallow than serious. The algorithm doesn't care about truth. It only cares about what keeps you watching. The result? We're building a civilization trained not to think, but to react, not to question, but to consume. And every swipe, every click, every mindless scroll is rewiring what we find meaningful, what we respect, and who we trust. You might think it's harmless, just entertainment, just a way to unwind. But when stupidity is rewarded, stupidity becomes a strategy. People learn fast. Dumbing down, oversimplifying, or even faking ignorance isn't just accepted. It's a viable path to influence. Look at your feed. YouTube thumbnails scream with cartoonish faces. Politicians speak in hashtags, not policy. Viral posts are rarely accurate, but always loud. The message to the next generation is clear. Complexity is boring, intelligence is elitist, and the only thing that matters is being seen. So ask yourself, when did we start confusing noise with knowledge? When did visibility become more important than value? The answer is unsettling. We live in a system that doesn't just tolerate stupidity. It monetizes it, promotes it, and glorifies it. If we don't recognize this pattern, we'll wake up in a world where deep thinking is a liability, not a virtue. Where intellectual life is a relic, and the shallow don't just survive, they dominate. But it gets even darker. Stupidity today isn't just tolerated or celebrated, it's engineered. We've entered an era where ignorance is a calculated strategy. The rise of the dumb but rich persona isn't a fluke, it's a formula. It's a performance, carefully crafted to seem relatable, harmless, and endlessly entertaining. And the rewards? Massive. Followers, sponsorships, power. In a world where attention is currency, playing dumb is now an economic advantage. The people getting the most airtime aren't the most thoughtful, they're the most outrageous. Controversy, not competence, drives clicks. Shock value beats substance. And behind every viral moment, there's a chilling realization. Authenticity is less valuable than virality. Why develop wisdom when you can manufacture noise? Why offer insight when exaggeration pays better? We've engineered a media ecosystem where the smartest move is to act dumb, and millions are cashing in. This isn't just a quirky trend. It's the rise of a deeper cultural pathology. Anti-intellectualism. We don't just ignore experts anymore, we actively distrust them. Intellectuals are branded as elitists. Scientists are mocked as out of touch. Deep thinkers are dismissed as irrelevant, too serious, too complicated, or worst of all, not entertaining enough. This is a quiet war on depth, waged with memes, mockery, and viral trends. And the battlefield? Social media, platforms meticulously designed to reward speed over substance, emotion over evidence. Content that's short, loud, and emotionally charged spreads like wildfire because it's easy to consume. A sarcastic reel will always outperform a nuanced explainer. A conspiracy theory will always get more engagement than a peer-reviewed study. Why? Because truth demands effort. Lies are effortless. And in a world addicted to dopamine, ease always wins. We've built a machine that punishes complexity and glorifies simplicity, no matter how false, shallow, or destructive that simplicity might be. We're not just dumbing down, we're monetizing the performance of stupidity. Everywhere you look, fake lifestyles, manufactured drama, personas built for clicks, not substance. Millions follow influencers who offer nothing but surface, while the real thinkers, educators, and truth-tellers are drowned out by the noise, too complex, too slow, too inconvenient for the scroll. Ask yourself, when did we start rewarding people for knowing less? When did ignorance become anesthetic? The terrifying truth is this: we've trained a generation to believe it's not what you know that matters, but how entertaining your ignorance looks online. And once that belief takes root, once stupidity becomes a brand, a business, a badge of honor, there's no incentive left to seek truth, only to seek attention. But let's dig even deeper. Why is shallow content not just surviving, but thriving? Why does it feel almost irresistible to scroll past the complex and dive into the silly, the sensational, the stupid? The answer isn't just cultural, it's psychological. In a world that feels increasingly chaotic, simplicity offers something we're all quietly craving: a sense of control. Life today is overwhelming. Unstable economies, shifting identities, and global crises we barely comprehend create a storm of confusion. In that chaos, simplicity becomes seductive. A shallow post that confirms what we already believe. A joke that lets us dodge uncomfortable truths. A 10-second video that demands nothing, no thinking, no effort, just instant relief. The shallower the content, the more it gives us the illusion that we're in control, that we get it, that we're not lost. Psychologists call this the fluency effect. The easier something is to process, the more we believe it must be true. Our brains reward simplicity not because it's accurate, but because it feels good. In a media environment engineered to bombard us with information, anything complex feels like friction, so we start avoiding friction without even realizing it. We choose content that feels effortless. We laugh instead of reflect. We react instead of pause. And slowly, we lose our appetite for anything that requires real thinking. Humor becomes our armor. We joke about everything: politics, health, even existential dread, not because it's funny, but because it's easier than facing the weight of it all. Irony becomes a shield, sarcasm becomes currency, and depth becomes a burden we're too tired to carry. It's not that people don't care, it's that they're exhausted. And the shallow stuff? It's fast, it's fun, and most importantly, it doesn't hurt. But let's not ignore the biology. Shallow content hits the brain like fast food: quick, salty, addictive. Every like, every swipe, every notification pumps dopamine into our system. It rewards us instantly. No patience required, no delayed gratification, just the quick hit. And just like junk food, the more we consume it, the more we crave it, and the harder it becomes to return to anything nourishing. A 3,000-word essay feels like a mountain. A thoughtful documentary feels like homework. And the algorithm knows this, so it keeps feeding us what's easy, never what's right. Here we are, a society seduced by simplicity, addicted to immediacy, and mentally rewired to avoid anything that requires effort. Not because we're lazy, but because the system has taught us that shallow is safer, faster, and more pleasurable. And that might be the most dangerous lesson of all. But here's the part we rarely admit. This isn't just about individual choices. It's not that millions of people all spontaneously decided to abandon depth. The system was designed, engineered, to reward the shallow. The platforms we use, the content we consume, the attention economy we live in, none of this is neutral. The shallowness is not an accident. It's an algorithm. Social media doesn't care about truth. It doesn't care about nuance. It cares about one thing: how long you stay on the app. And what keeps you scrolling isn't critical thinking. It's emotional reaction, outrage, envy, lust, laughter, whatever gets the pulse up and the brain off. That's what the algorithm pushes. Not wisdom, not learning, not uncomfortable truths, but the easiest bait for your most primal instincts, because that's what keeps the ad revenue flowing. And the market follows suit. The entertainment industry isn't here to uplift. It's here to monetize attention. And stupidity, believe it or not, sells better than brilliance. A fake feud between influencers generates more clicks than a lecture from a Nobel laureate. A drama-filled live stream beats a documentary. A controversial tweet, no matter how false, spreads farther and faster than the truth ever could. Why? Because chaos is profitable. Outrage is monetizable. And ignorance, when packaged right, is good business. The news media is no exception. The model rewards speed over accuracy, spectacle over depth. Complex stories are reduced to headlines. Nuance is flattened into binary conflict. And the personalities that rise to the top aren't the ones with the best ideas. They're the ones with the loudest voices. The ones who can package fear, blame, and false certainty into a 30-second soundbite. Because that's what drives ratings. That's what wins elections. And let's not forget politics. Today's most successful politicians aren't those who understand policy. They're those who master performance. The more extreme the position, the more attention it gets. The more simplistic the message, the more it resonates. Governing has become secondary to branding. We no longer elect leaders. We elect content creators. And in that environment, anyone who dares to speak with nuance, with honesty, with complexity, is drowned out by the noise. So before we blame ourselves, we need to understand the bigger picture. We are living in a system that rewards the worst parts of our psychology, that feeds our impulses instead of our intellect, that profits from confusion, distraction, and division. The glorification of stupidity didn't happen in a vacuum. It was built, refined, and optimized for maximum engagement. And the deeper you look, the more you realize this isn't a glitch. It's the plan. So what happens when a system rewards ignorance, punishes intellect, and trains an entire culture to crave simplicity over truth? The result isn't just a shallow internet feed. It's a lost generation, a society slowly losing its compass. Because over time, what begins as a cultural trend becomes a civilizational crisis. Young people are growing up in a world where being thoughtful isn't respected. It's ridiculed. Where asking deep questions makes you boring. Where the loudest, not the wisest, become role models. And so they adapt. They learn that it's safer to play dumb, to be funny, flashy, and unthreatening, rather than curious, serious, or intellectually ambitious. Intelligence, once admired, now feels socially expensive. So many choose to hide it, and slowly, even they begin to forget it was ever there. Meanwhile, our education systems, once designed to cultivate critical thought, are being devalued, defunded, and dismissed. Teachers are overworked. Humanities are cut. Philosophy, history, and ethics, the very disciplines that train the mind, are seen as irrelevant in a market obsessed with speed and profit. We tell students to major in whatever makes money, not in what makes meaning. And then we wonder why they feel lost. At the same time, those who rise to fame are often famous for being famous. No invention, no insight, just visibility. We idolize influencers who offer no vision beyond the next brand deal. We reward personalities who exploit attention, not those who expand understanding. And in that world, the truly thoughtful retreat. The philosophers, scientists, and deep thinkers become the silent minority ignored in the public square, drowned out by the spectacle. The cultural microphone has been handed to the least informed and the most confident. And here's the cost. When wisdom disappears from the conversation, so does our ability to solve real problems. Climate change, public health, political polarization. These aren't just technical challenges. They are crises of thinking, crises that require nuance, patience, and uncomfortable truth. But how can a society respond wisely when it has spent decades training itself to reject wisdom? When facts are dismissed as bias and complexity is seen as manipulation? This is how societies lose their way. Not in one moment, but through 1,000 small choices to reward ease over effort, noise over depth, surface over substance. And one day, you wake up and realize the people in charge don't understand the problems they're trying to solve. The citizens don't trust the few who do. And the institutions meant to guide us have been emptied of meaning because we stopped believing thinking mattered. And if we let that continue, the future won't be led by the best among us. It will be shaped by whoever shouts the loudest and sells the most. But here's the hope. Beneath the noise, something else is stirring. For all the chaos, not everyone is giving in. A quiet resistance is building. It's not loud, it's not trending, but it's real. A growing number of people, especially the young, are beginning to question the system. They're starting to push back against the shallowness, the distractions, the digital overload. They're not shouting, they're unplugging. You'll find them in the movement called digital minimalism. Young men and women choosing less screen time, fewer apps, and more intentional living. They're deleting social media. They're reading long-form books again. They're writing by hand. They're choosing depth over dopamine, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. They're realizing that constant stimulation doesn't make life richer, it makes it emptier. And against all odds, long-form content is making a comeback. Podcasts that run for hours, filled with nuance, silence, even disagreement, are finding loyal audiences. Conversations with thinkers like Lex Fridman, Sam Harris, and Andrew Huberman are reaching millions. There's no flashy editing, no viral hooks, just people talking honestly, slowly, about things that matter. And people are listening, because maybe we're hungrier for depth than the system gives us credit for. Education, too, is quietly reinventing itself. While mainstream institutions chase marketable degrees and corporate partnerships, small colleges and independent programs are reviving the soul of education. They're teaching philosophy, logic, critical thinking. Students are reading Plato, Nietzsche, Marcus Aurelius, not because it gets them a job offer, but because it makes them human. Because in a world addicted to distraction, learning how to think is a radical act. Even the culture of self-help is evolving. The loudest influencers still preach quick fixes and dopamine hacks. But beneath that, a quieter wave is growing. People are journaling, practicing stoicism, meditating, not for productivity, but for clarity. They're not chasing viral success, they're chasing meaning. And they're finding it in ancient ideas, difficult books, and real conversations. These aren't revolutions with banners and slogans. They're revolutions of the mind. Small, disciplined, invisible to the algorithm. But make no mistake, they are happening. There are people waking up to the cost of shallow living. People choosing silence over noise, reflection over reaction, substance over spectacle. And while they may not dominate the headlines or trend on TikTok, they represent something far more powerful than a moment. They represent a shift, a countercurrent, proof that not everyone is willing to drown in the shallow end of culture, that there are still those willing to dive deep, even when the world tells them to float. So what do you do when the world around you celebrates the shallow? When ignorance is marketable and depth feels like exile? You don't fight the world with noise. You don't outshout the chaos. You take a harder path, the quieter, slower, more deliberate one. Not because it's easy, but because it's the only path that leads anywhere real. It starts with you, with the questions you're willing to ask yourself. Are you thinking or just reacting? Are you chasing truth or chasing validation? Are you willing to feel uncomfortable, not emotionally, but intellectually? Because growth doesn't happen inside echo chambers. It happens when you step outside them. When you let your ideas be challenged. When you trade certainty for curiosity. Then it moves into your habits. Not dramatic changes, but small, intentional ones. Read a little longer than you normally would. Watch something that doesn't entertain you, but stretches you. Share something online, not because it's popular, but because it's true. Engage with ideas that take effort, that require context, that don't fit in a caption. Choose what nourishes, not just what stimulates. Your mind, like your body, becomes what you feed it. Next comes community. Find people who care about meaning, not just memes. People who want to talk about what matters, not just what's trending. Seek conversations that go deeper than opinions. Conversations that ask why. Build spaces online or in person where thinking is honored, where disagreement isn't feared but welcomed, where people aren't afraid to say, "I don't know," and mean it. And above all, your attitude matters. Don't pretend to be less intelligent to make others comfortable. Don't play dumb to get along, because the longer you fake it, the more likely you are to forget who you really are. The world doesn't need more empty smiles and performative ignorance. It needs people willing to be awake, people willing to risk being misunderstood in order to speak truth, people who still believe that depth matters even when the world seems allergic to it. So no, you're not here to wage war against the system. You're here to live differently within it, to make different choices, to carry the torch of thought in a time of distraction, to be a small, steady light in a world that keeps dimming itself. Because culture doesn't change from the top down. It shifts one choice at a time, one mind at a time. And maybe, if enough of us choose to think deeper, question harder, and live more consciously, shallow won't be the only thing that wins anymore.